Get that trailer trash out of my seat. Now! Mr. Richard Whitfield, husband of Brigadier General Sarah Whitfield, dripping in designer cologne and military spouse entitlement, pointed his manicured finger at Amanda Walker like he was pointing at garbage. The woman in the faded gray t-shirt didn't even look up from where she sat quietly in the third row of the viewing stands. "Ma'am, I said, move!" Drill Sergeant Rivera's voice cracked like thunder across Fort Benning's parade grounds. "VIP section is for real military families, not whatever you are." The temperature was already pushing 94 degrees Fahrenheit at 0800 hours, and the graduation ceremony hadn't even started yet. 800 parents, grandparents, siblings, and friends had gathered to watch their loved ones complete basic combat training. The parade grounds stretched out before them, American flags hanging limp in the still morning air, the red Georgia clay already baking under the merciless sun. Amanda Walker stood slowly from her metal folding chair. Too slowly, some would later recall. Her calloused hands that had once held the arterial bleeding of 3 Marines while under heavy fire in Kandahar, gripped to the back of the chair for just a moment. 800 pairs of eyes watched. Dozens of phones were already recording, their owners sensing drama unfolding. Out in the formation, standing at perfect attention, Private First Class Walker couldn't turn his head to see what was happening, but his jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. I'm sorry," Amanda whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sound of a Black Hawk helicopter passing overhead. "I'll move." But the way she moved, spine straight as a rifle barrel, shoulders squared with military precision, eyes scanning all exits and elevated positions in exactly 2.3 seconds, made Captain Williams in the honor seats lean forward in his chair. His coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. That wasn't how a janitor moved. That wasn't how a civilian moved. That was muscle memory. That was probably some welfare queen, Mr. Whitfield laughed to his circle of equally pretentious military spouses, each one decorated in their wives' achievements like they were their own. "Look at those boots. Goodwill Special. Her poor son must be so embarrassed. Can you imagine having to claim that as your mother?" Amanda sat in the last row of the bleachers, as far from the VIP section as physically possible, while still being able to see the ceremony. Alone, silent, watching her only son prepare to graduate while everyone treated her like she was nothing more than dirt beneath their feet. They had no idea that in exactly 47 minutes, everything they thought they knew would shatter like glass. They had no idea who they'd just humiliated. They had no idea what those faded scars on her arms really meant, or why her left hand occasionally trembled from nerve damage sustained in an explosion that had killed everyone else in the vehicle. The morning had started 14 hours earlier, when Amanda Walker had climbed into her 2009 Ford F-150 pickup truck at 2:15 a.m. in Topeka, Kansas. The odometer read 247,312 miles. The air conditioning hadn't worked since 2018, and the passenger door only opened from the outside, but it ran, and that was all that mattered. She had driven 1,247 miles straight through, stopping only for gas and to use the restroom at truck stops where no one looked twice at a middle-aged woman in worn clothes. She had arrived at Fort Benning at 4:30 a.m., 3.5 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The parking lot was empty except for a few staff cars and the night shift military police making their rounds. Amanda had parked in the furthest corner of the lot, wanting to avoid any possibility of blocking someone more important. She had sat in her truck, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded her too much of the skies over Helmand Province, and pulled out a carefully folded American flag from her bag. The flag was folded in the traditional triangle, presented to her 8 years ago by a Navy honor guard at a funeral she still couldn't fully remember, through the haze of grief and prescription sedatives. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Walker, Navy SEAL Team 6, killed in action during a classified operation in Syria. The details were still classified, would probably remain classified long after she was gone. All she knew was that he had died saving his team, that his body had been recovered, and that their son, then only 10 years old, had stood beside her at Arlington National Cemetery, trying so hard to be brave while his world crumbled around him. Now, as she sat in the back row of the bleachers, she could see that same boy, 18 years old and standing tall in his Army combat uniform, preparing to graduate with honors. Private First Class Thomas Walker had not only completed basic combat training, but had been selected as the distinguished honor graduate of his cycle, scoring perfect marks in marksmanship, land navigation, and leadership evaluations. The instructors didn't know that his mother had taught him to shoot when he was 12, using her husband's rifle at a range in Kansas, where no one asked questions about the woman, with the 1,000-yard stare teaching a kid to control his breathing and squeeze, not pull, the trigger. Before taking her seat in the bleachers, Amanda had noticed an elderly gentleman, easily 82 years old, struggling with a heavy bag near the entrance to the viewing area. Without hesitation, Amanda had moved to help, lifting the bag with an ease that belied her slight frame. "Oh, thank you, dear," the old man had said, his voice quavering with age and emotion. "I'm here to see my great-grandson graduate. His parents couldn't make it. Work, you know." "No need to thank me, sir," Amanda had replied quietly, carrying the bag to the man's seat in the front row, the VIP section where Amanda herself would soon be ejected from. "Congratulations on your great-grandson's achievement." "Are you here for someone special?" the elderly man had asked. "My son," Amanda had said simply, then moved away before more questions could follow. She didn't mention that she was the only one there for him, that his father's parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, that her own parents had disowned her when she'd chosen the military over their plans for her to marry the banker's son back in Ohio. The simple act of kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. Master Sergeant Torres, standing near the entrance checking his clipboard, had watched the interaction with interest. Something about the way the woman moved, the economy of motion, the constant awareness of her surroundings, triggered something in his memory. He'd seen that kind of movement before, in operators coming back from deployment, in the elite soldiers who occasionally passed through Benning on their way to more classified destinations. Now, as Amanda sat in exile in the back row, she carefully pulled out a tissue from her pocket and began folding it. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, creating perfect angles and crisp edges. To anyone watching, it might have looked like nervous fidgeting, but the way she folded it, creating the exact dimensions and angles used in military honor guard flag folding, was another tell that Captain Williams caught from his position in the VIP section. His eyes narrowed slightly as he watched her complete the fold in exactly the regulation 13 movements. "I don't know why they even let people like that on base," Mr. Whitfield continued, his voice carrying deliberately so Amanda could hear every word. "Look at her. Probably hasn't seen the inside of a gym in 20 years. Wearing a t-shirt to her own son's graduation, no makeup, no effort. It's disrespectful to the uniform, honestly. My wife would never allow such standards to slip." The irony wasn't lost on Amanda. Under the loose gray t-shirt that hid her figure, her body was still corded with functional muscle, maintained through 5 a.m. runs and the physical demands of her job at the VA hospital, where she mopped floors and cleaned the rooms of wounded warriors who had no idea they were being tended to by someone who had once been one of them. The decision to dress down, to appear as unremarkable as possible, had been deliberate. She didn't want to draw attention. This was Thomas's day, not hers. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, a man whose combat experience consisted of 6 months in the Green Zone, where the greatest danger had been food poisoning from the mess hall, strutted over to where Amanda had originally been sitting. His uniform was immaculate, every ribbon and badge perfectly aligned, his shoes polished to a mirror shine that would have made any drill sergeant proud. "Ma'am," he said to Amanda, in a tone that made it clear the term of respect was purely procedural, "I'm going to have to ask you to move. This section is reserved for immediate family members of honor graduates and distinguished guests." "I am immediate family," Amanda had replied quietly. "My son is—" "Private First Class Walker?" Hayes had interrupted, looking at his list with obvious skepticism. "The distinguished honor graduate?" His eyes traveled over Amanda's appearance again, taking in the faded jeans with the small tear at the knee, the scuffed boots that had walked through blood and sand in places he couldn't imagine, the calloused hands of someone who clearly worked manual labor. "I see. Well, regardless, this particular section is for, well, it's for VIP families. I'm sure you understand." Amanda had understood perfectly. She understood that in their eyes, she didn't look like the mother of the top graduate. She didn't look like someone who belonged in the same space as the husbands of generals and colonels. She looked like what she had chosen to become, invisible, unremarkable, forgotten. It was safer that way. For her. For Thomas. For everyone. The move from the third row to the last row had been observed by dozens of people, many of whom whispered among themselves about the poor woman being put in her place. But a few observers, those with trained eyes, noticed details that didn't fit the narrative. The way she moved through the crowd without bumping into anyone, despite not seeming to look where she was going. The way her eyes tracked movement in her peripheral vision. The way she automatically positioned herself with clear sight lines to all exits and kept her back to a wall. Drill Sergeant Rivera, a man who prided himself on being able to break down any recruit and build them back up into a soldier, had been particularly harsh in his dismissal. "This is a military ceremony," he had barked at Amanda. "There are standards, dress codes. Maybe you should have thought about that before showing up looking like you just rolled out of bed." If he had known that the woman he was addressing had once spent 72 hours straight in a hide site in Fallujah, peeing in bottles and eating cold MREs while providing overwatch for a Marine unit clearing houses, never moving, never complaining, he might have chosen his words more carefully. If he had known that rolling out of bed for her had once meant 0.3 seconds from unconscious to fully armed and ready to engage the enemy, he might have shown more respect. If you're feeling that familiar anger, that frustration at watching good people, real heroes, get disrespected by those who confuse privilege with patriotism, then hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the thanks button to support more stories honoring the forgotten heroes among us. These are the warriors who chose to fade into the background rather than wear their service like a crown, and they deserve to have their stories told. Old Jim Morrison, not the singer, but a Vietnam veteran who'd lost his left leg to a mine outside Da Nang in 1968, had watched the entire exchange from his seat a few rows behind where Amanda now sat. He'd arrived early too, a habit from the war that he'd never been able to shake. 5:45 a.m., he'd been in the parking lot, sitting in his Buick and watching the sunrise while remembering other sunrises in jungles half a world away. He'd noticed Amanda's truck when she'd pulled in, had watched her sit there for nearly an hour before finally getting out. He'd seen the way she'd checked the parking lot, not with the casual glance of a civilian, but with the methodical grid pattern observation of someone trained to spot IEDs and ambush positions. He'd noticed the slight favor of her left leg when she walked, almost imperceptible unless you knew what to look for, the kind of thing that spoke to old injuries that never quite healed right. When she'd been forced to move to the back row, Jim had gotten up from his seat, his prosthetic leg clicking slightly as he walked, and moved to sit just a few seats away from her, not close enough to intrude, but close enough to show solidarity. He'd caught a glimpse of the scar on her right shoulder when her shirt had shifted, 8 inches of puckered white tissue that looked suspiciously like shrapnel damage. "Hell of a hot day for a graduation," he said conversationally, not looking directly at her. "Yes, sir, it is," Amanda replied, her voice neutral but respectful. She'd noticed his Vietnam veteran hat, the Purple Heart pin on the brim. "Your boy graduating today?" "Yes, sir. Private First Class Walker." "The honor graduate? Hell, you must be proud." "I am." Jim noticed she didn't elaborate, didn't brag or gush like most parents would. Just a simple acknowledgement. He also noticed the way she'd said, "sir," not the casual way civilians used it, but with the unconscious respect beaten into every military member from day one of basic training. The ceremony was about to begin. The training battalion commander had taken the podium, beginning the traditional welcome speech about warrior ethos and Army values. Out in the formation, 543 new soldiers stood at attention in the crushing heat, their uniforms already showing dark patches of sweat. The temperature had climbed to 97 degrees, the humidity making it feel like standing in a wet oven. "Ladies and gentlemen, families and friends," the commander's voice boomed over the PA system. "Today we celebrate the transformation of civilians into soldiers, the continuation of a proud tradition that stretches back to the birth of our nation." Amanda only half listened to the speech. She'd heard variations of it so many times before, at her own graduation from basic training 26 years ago, at Ranger School, at selection, at countless ceremonies in between. Her attention was focused on her son, standing in the front rank as the senior graduate, his bearing perfect despite the sweat she could see running down his face even from this distance. The speech droned on for 15 minutes, the commander hitting all the required points about duty, honor, and country. Parents fanned themselves with programs. Younger siblings complained about the heat. Girlfriends took selfies with the formation in the background. And through it all, Amanda sat perfectly still, her breathing controlled, her eyes never leaving her son. Then it happened. 32 minutes into the ceremony, just as the battalion sergeant major was beginning to call out individual awards, a commotion erupted in the formation. A soldier in the third rank suddenly wobbled, his legs buckling. He tried to lock his knees, tried to stay upright, but the combination of heat, dehydration, and stress was too much. Private Jackson, 19 years old from Detroit, pitched forward and hit the ground with a sound that carried across the parade ground. For a moment, nobody moved. Heat casualties were common at summer graduations, and there were protocols in place. The medical team, stationed in an air-conditioned tent 100 yards away, began gathering their gear. But they were 300 yards from where Private Jackson had fallen, and in heat like this, every second counted. Amanda was moving before the soldier's body had fully settled on the ground. She didn't run exactly. It was more of a controlled sprint, the kind of movement that looked almost casual but covered ground with shocking speed. She vaulted the 3-foot barrier between the spectator area and the parade ground in a single fluid motion that would have impressed any parkour athlete. "Move! Move! Move!" she barked, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command authority as she pushed through the formation. Soldiers automatically stepped aside, their training responding to the voice even as their minds tried to process what was happening. She reached Private Jackson in 12 seconds flat, dropping to her knees beside him with the controlled slide of someone who'd done this before, on concrete, on gravel, on sand, on surfaces far less forgiving than parade ground grass. Her hands were already checking his pulse, finding it rapid and thready, while simultaneously assessing his breathing. "You! Get me water! Now!" She pointed at the nearest drill sergeant. "You! Find something for shade. You! Call for the medics and tell them we have a heat casualty with potential cardiac involvement." Her voice was calm but carried the kind of authority that brooked no argument. "Everyone else, back! Give him air!" Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, loosening his uniform, elevating his legs, checking his pupils. When she found his pulse starting to become irregular, she didn't hesitate. Using pressure points and massage techniques taught only in advanced combat lifesaver courses, she began stabilizing his heart rhythm while simultaneously cooling his core temperature with water someone had brought. Captain Williams had stood up from his seat, his phone already out. Something about the way she was working, the specific protocols she was following, triggered a memory. He'd seen this before, in a classified briefing about combat medicine techniques developed by Joint Special Operations Command. Techniques that weren't taught in standard first aid courses, or even regular combat lifesaver training. Techniques that were classified and restricted to special operations medics and certain intelligence personnel. "Get gauze from the med kit," Amanda ordered a nearby sergeant. "We need to protect his airway in case he vomits." She positioned Private Jackson in a modified recovery position that Williams recognized as the tactical field recovery position, designed to maintain airway while allowing for rapid movement if necessary. It was a small detail, but telling. The way she worked was mechanical, automatic, her muscle memory taking over. She didn't have to think about what to do next. Her hands simply knew. 47 seconds after she'd reached him, Private Jackson's pulse had stabilized. His breathing was becoming regular. His eyes fluttered open. "Don't try to move," Amanda said, her voice gentler now. "You're okay. You just overheated. The medics are coming." Lieutenant Colonel Hayes had pushed through the crowd, his face red with a combination of heat and indignation. "Ma'am, you can't just run under the parade ground. This is a controlled environment. You're interfering with—" "Sir," Master Sergeant Torres interrupted quietly, having jogged over from his position. "She just saved that soldier's life. Whatever she did, his vitals are stabilizing. The medics confirmed it on the radio." Hayes looked down at Amanda, who was still monitoring Private Jackson's pulse with one hand, while keeping his airway positioned with the other. "Where did you train?" he demanded. "Are you a nurse? A paramedic?" "I just pick things up," Amanda said vaguely, not meeting his eyes. She could feel the attention on her now, dozens of eyes watching, evaluating, wondering. This was exactly what she'd tried to avoid. The medics arrived then, a full team with a stretcher and equipment. The lead medic, Staff Sergeant Peterson, took one look at how Private Jackson was positioned, at the specific points where Amanda was applying pressure, and his eyes widened. "Ma'am, are you medical personnel?" he asked as he knelt beside her. "Just someone who wanted to help," Amanda replied, already starting to ease back, to fade into the background again. "Wait," Peterson said, grabbing her wrist gently. He'd noticed something, a small tattoo just visible under her watch band. It was partially obscured, but what he could see looked like... Is that a caduceus with lightning bolts? Amanda pulled her hand back quickly, too quickly. It's nothing. Just take care of him. She stood and began walking back toward the spectator area, but the damage was done. Too many people had seen her move, had heard her voice, had witnessed the kind of medical intervention that didn't come from watching Grey's Anatomy. Old Jim leaned over to Master Sergeant Torres, who had returned to the spectator area. That wasn't civilian medical training, he said quietly. That was battlefield medicine. I've seen it before. Hell, I've been on the receiving end of it. Torres nodded slowly. Thunder 7, he said, almost to himself. What? When she was calling for water, she said Thunder 7 needs water now. She called herself Thunder 7. That's a call sign. Captain Williams had his phone out now, texting rapidly to someone. The response came back quickly, and his face paled slightly as he read it. He looked up at Amanda, who had retaken her seat in the back row as if nothing had happened, and then back at his phone. Do you recognize something unusual about this story already? Can you spot the breadcrumbs being laid out? Comment below with your theories about who Amanda really is. But remember, the biggest surprises are yet to come. Mr. Whitfield, never one to let an opportunity for drama pass, had stood up and was addressing his circle of military spouses in a voice loud enough for half the parade ground to hear. Probably just some wannabe trying to play hero. I bet she's not even certified. Could have made things worse. My wife says civilians who interfere with military procedures can be prosecuted. General Sarah Whitfield, his wife, was actually in Afghanistan at that moment, commanding the 1st Infantry Division. She had no idea her husband was using her name and rank like a club to beat down anyone he deemed inferior. If she had known, she would have been mortified. But Mr. Whitfield had been playing the military spouse game for 22 years, and he had gotten very good at it. She probably saw some YouTube videos about first aid and thinks she's a medic, Mr. Whitfield continued. Stolen valor is what it is. Pretending to have medical training to make herself look important on her son's big day. The ceremony had resumed, though there was a palpable tension in the air now. The battalion commander had returned to calling out awards, but people kept glancing at Amanda, whispering among themselves. She sat perfectly still, her face expressionless, but inside she was calculating. How much had they seen? How much could they guess? How much danger had she just put herself and Thomas in? The Distinguished Honor Graduate Award was announced, and Private First Class Walker marched forward to receive it. The crowd applauded, but Amanda noticed several people looking between Thomas and her, making connections, asking themselves how the son of that woman had managed to achieve the highest honor in his training cycle. The morning heat continued to build, now pushing 103 degrees. More soldiers were starting to sway in formation, but the drill sergeants were on alert now, pulling anyone who looked unsteady before they could fall. The ceremony continued with the mechanical precision of military tradition, but the earlier drama had changed the atmosphere. During a brief interlude while the battalion colors were being presented, Amanda felt her phone vibrate. She pulled it out, careful to keep the screen hidden from those around her. It was a notification from USAA, the military insurance company. Final death benefit payment approved for CPO Marcus Walker, USN. Amount deposited to account ending in 4379. 8 years. It had taken 8 years for the Navy to finally approve the full death benefits for a classified operation they couldn't officially acknowledge had happened. $2.7 million, the maximum payout for a service member killed in action. Money that would ensure Thomas could go to college, could have the life his father had wanted for him. Money that came too late to prevent the nights when they'd eaten ramen noodles for dinner because Amanda's janitor salary didn't quite stretch to the end of the month. She closed the phone and slipped it back in her pocket, her face betraying nothing of the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Marcus should be here. He should be the one watching their son graduate. He should be the one embarrassing Thomas with loud cheers and too many photos. Instead, there was just her, sitting in exile in the back row, trying to remain invisible while the husbands of living soldiers judged her for her appearance. The ceremony moved into its final phase. The new soldiers were about to take their oath, the final step in their transformation from civilians to warriors. The battalion commander called them to attention, and 543 voices responded as one. "Raise your right hand and repeat after me," the commander instructed. "I state your name, do solemnly swear." Amanda found herself mouthing the words along with them. The oath she'd taken 26 years ago still etched in her memory. The oath she'd lived by through 6 deployments, through operations so classified they didn't officially exist, through the loss of friends whose deaths couldn't be acknowledged, whose families were told only that they had died in service to their country, with no details, no closure, no understanding of the sacrifice made. As the ceremony concluded and the formation was dismissed, families rushed onto the parade ground to embrace their new soldiers. Amanda stayed seated, watching as Thomas was surrounded by the families of other honor graduates, their parents congratulating him, taking photos with him, treating him like the exceptional young man he was, even as they wondered where his own family was. She watched him scan the crowd, looking for her, and when their eyes met across the chaos of celebrating families, she gave him a small nod and the tiniest of smiles. He started toward her, but was intercepted by Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. "Private Walker," Hayes said loud enough for others to hear, "your mother caused quite a disruption earlier, running onto the parade ground like that. It's highly irregular." "Sir, she was helping—" "I'm sure she meant well," Hayes interrupted, his tone suggesting he believed nothing of the sort. "But there are protocols, standards. Perhaps you could explain to her that military ceremonies are not the place for civilian heroics." Thomas's jaw clenched, the same tell his mother had when she was controlling her anger. "Yes, sir," he said through gritted teeth. Mr. Whitfield had approached now, drawn like a shark to blood in the water. "Your mother seems to have a flair for the dramatic," he said to Thomas, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "It must be so hard for you, having to overcome that kind of background." "My mother is the strongest person I know, sir," Thomas replied, his voice steady despite the fury building in his chest. "Oh, I'm sure she is, dear," Mr. Whitfield replied, the condescension thick in his voice. "Single mothers always have to be strong, don't they? Especially when they're raising a child alone. No father figure, no proper family structure. It's amazing you've done so well despite the disadvantages." If he had known that Thomas had been raised with the memory of a father who'd earned the Navy Cross, the Silver Star, and 2 Bronze Stars with valor, who'd been the kind of warrior poets write epic songs about, he might have chosen his words more carefully. If he had known that his mother had raised him with the kind of discipline and values that military academies try to instill, teaching him not just how to be a soldier, but why someone becomes one, he might have shown more respect. The reception had moved to the community center, a blessed relief from the crushing heat outside. Air conditioning struggled to cool the space packed with hundreds of people, but it was still better than the parade ground. Tables were set up with refreshments, a modest spread of cookies, punch, and coffee that seemed inadequate for the occasion but was all the base budget allowed. Amanda entered quietly, staying near the walls, avoiding the clusters of celebrating families. She found a corner where she could watch Thomas being congratulated by his drill sergeants, his fellow graduates, the base chaplain. He was glowing with pride, standing taller than his 6-foot frame, looking so much like his father that it made her chest ache. "You must be so proud," the voice came from beside her. An elderly gentleman, the same one Amanda had helped earlier, had approached while she wasn't paying attention, a failure of situational awareness that would have gotten her killed in other circumstances. "I am, sir," Amanda replied. "I'm Walter Morrison," the man said, extending a weathered hand. "That's my great-grandson, Private Morrison, over there. You helped me with my bag earlier." "It was nothing, sir." "It was kind," Walter corrected. "Kindness is never nothing. And what you did for that young man who collapsed, that was more than kind. That was heroic." Amanda shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have—" "No," Walter interrupted gently. "They wouldn't have. And they didn't. You did. My late wife was a nurse in Korea. I know what combat medicine looks like, dear. That wasn't something you learned from a first aid course." Before Amanda could respond, there was a commotion at the entrance. Captain Williams had entered, and he wasn't alone. With him were 2 other officers, their uniforms bearing the insignia of the Criminal Investigation Division. They were scanning the crowd, obviously looking for someone. Amanda's threat assessment went into overdrive. 3 operators, trained in investigation and apprehension. In a crowded space with multiple civilians, including children. Limited exits, all of which would be easily covered. Her car was 300 yards away in the parking lot. Thomas was 40 feet away, unaware of the potential danger. Tactical situation, extremely unfavorable. The investigators' eyes found her, and they began moving through the crowd in her direction. Not aggressively, not urgently, but with purpose. Amanda stayed perfectly still, running through options in her mind. Run? That would cause a scene, ruin Thomas's day, and ultimately be futile. Fight? Absolutely not. These were American soldiers, the same uniform she'd once worn. Submit? Most likely, but to what? Captain Williams reached her first, the two CID officers flanking him. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "could we speak with you privately for a moment?" "Is there a problem, Captain?" Amanda asked, her voice calm despite her elevated heart rate. "No problem," Williams assured her. "Just some questions about the medical intervention earlier. You potentially saved a soldier's life, and there's paperwork that needs to be filed." It was a lie, and not a particularly good one. Amanda could read it in his eyes, in the way the CID officers were positioned, in the slight tension in Williams's shoulders. They knew something, or suspected something, and they were fishing. "I'd prefer to stay here," Amanda said. "My son is about to—" "It will only take a moment," one of the CID officers insisted. Chief Warrant Officer Thompson, according to his name tape. "We have a private office just down the hall." Amanda weighed her options. Refusing would only heighten suspicion. Going with them risked exposure, but might allow her to control the narrative. She glanced at Thomas, who was now watching the interaction with growing concern. 5 minutes, she said. "That's all." They led her to a small conference room, the kind used for briefings and meetings. The walls were covered with unit patches, photos of graduating classes, motivational posters with Army values. It was aggressively normal, which somehow made it more threatening. Captain Williams closed the door and turned to face her. "Ma'am, I'm going to be direct. The medical techniques you used on Private Jackson are classified. They're part of a JASOC protocol that's not available to civilian personnel." Amanda's face remained neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "The pressure points you used," Chief Warrant Officer Thompson said, pulling out a tablet. "The specific sequence, the recovery position, it's all documented in training materials that require a top-secret clearance to access." "Maybe I got lucky," Amanda suggested. Williams pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It was a message, mostly redacted, but she could see enough. Someone had run her name through a database, and something had come back. Not everything, obviously, or this conversation would be very different, but enough to raise questions. "Amanda Walker," Williams read from his phone. "Married to Chief Petty Officer Marcus Walker, Navy SEAL Team 6, killed in action in Syria, 2016. That much is public record, but when we tried to dig deeper, to verify your background for the incident report, we hit walls. The kind of walls that suggest someone doesn't want your history examined too closely." "I'm just a janitor," Amanda said. "I work at the VA hospital in Topeka. I've worked there for 7 years. You can check." "We did," Thompson said. "Your employment is verified, but before that, before 2017, it's like you didn't exist." "I was a military spouse," Amanda said. "I followed my husband from base to base. That's not unusual." "No," Williams agreed, "but the classification level on your husband's service record is unusual. And the fact that certain databases flag your name with a do not investigate order is very unusual." Amanda said nothing. Sometimes silence was the best defense. Williams leaned forward. "Mrs. Walker, are you currently operating under any kind of federal protection, witness protection, something related to your husband's service?" It was an out, and Amanda recognized it as such. Williams was giving her an excuse, a way to explain the anomalies without admitting to anything more serious, but taking it would create its own problems, its own paper trail. There was a knock at the door, sharp and authoritative. Williams frowned and opened it. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes stood in the doorway, with Mr. Whitfield visible behind him. "Captain, what's going on here?" Hayes demanded. "Why is this woman being questioned? If it's about the disruption during the ceremony, I insist on being involved. As the senior operations officer, any disciplinary action—" "Sir, this is a CID matter," Thompson said firmly. "We need to—" "She assaulted a soldier," Mr. Whitfield exclaimed, pushing past Hayes. "I saw it. She was grabbing him, moving him around. For all we know, she made his condition worse. My wife is General Whitfield, and I demand—" "Sir, please," Williams started, but Mr. Whitfield was on a roll. "This is about stolen valor, isn't it?" he said triumphantly. "I knew it. The way she was pretending to know medicine, using military terminology. It's disgusting. People like her, pretending to be something they're not, disrespecting actual veterans. The phone on the conference room table rang, cutting through Mr. Whitfield's tirade. Williams picked it up, listened for a moment, and his face went pale. "Yes, sir. Understood, sir. Right away, sir." He hung up and looked at the CID officers. "We're done here." "Sir?" Thompson asked, confused. "That was Colonel Mitchell, the base commander. He just received a call from someone significantly above his pay grade. We're to cease all questions immediately and allow Mrs. Walker to return to the reception." "But," Hayes started. "Immediately, sir," Williams emphasized. He turned to Amanda. "Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience. You're free to go." Amanda stood, her movements careful and controlled. She had an idea who might have made that call, which meant her carefully constructed anonymity was crumbling faster than she'd feared. But for now, she just needed to get through the rest of the day, to let Thomas have his moment. As she moved toward the door, Mr. Whitfield blocked her path. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I know what you are. Some desperate woman trying to steal glory that isn't yours. Using your son's achievement to pretend you're something special." Amanda met his eyes for the first time, and Mr. Whitfield took an involuntary step back. There was something in that gaze, something cold and dangerous that didn't belong in the eyes of a janitor from Kansas. "You're right," Amanda said quietly. "I'm not special. I'm just a mother who came to watch her son graduate." "Excuse me." She walked past Mr. Whitfield and out of the conference room, leaving behind a very confused group of officers and one very angry military spouse. But as she returned to the reception, she noticed something had changed. People were looking at their phones, whispering urgently, glancing at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to awe. Old Jim Morrison intercepted her near the punch bowl. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you might want to see this." He showed her his phone. Someone had posted a video of her medical intervention on Facebook, and it had already been shared hundreds of times. But that wasn't what made her blood run cold. In the comments, someone had posted a photo, grainy and obviously taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed a younger Amanda in full combat gear, face partially obscured by tactical sunglasses, standing next to a helicopter. The caption read, "This is the same woman, Task Force Black. Iraq 2009. If you know, you know." The photo was real. She remembered that day, remembered the mission that had followed, remembered the 3 operators who hadn't come back. But that photo should not exist. It was supposed to have been classified, all evidence of that operation destroyed or locked away in a vault somewhere in Fort Bragg. "Who posted this?" she asked Jim. "Accounts already deleted," he said, "but the damage is done. It's spreading." Amanda looked across the room at Thomas, who was still surrounded by well-wishers, still unaware that his mother's past was about to come crashing into their carefully constructed present. She had worked so hard to give him a normal life, to keep him away from the shadow world she'd inhabited, to let him forge his own path without the weight of her history. Now, it was all about to unravel, but that was a problem for later. Right now, there was a more immediate threat. Mr. Whitfield had cornered Thomas and was saying something that had his face flushing red with anger. Amanda moved through the crowd, people unconsciously stepping aside as she approached, responding to something primal in her presence they couldn't quite identify. "Your mother is a fraud and a liar," Mr. Whitfield was saying, "and when my wife gets back from Afghanistan, she'll make sure everyone knows it. Stolen valor is a federal crime, and—" "Mr. Whitfield," Amanda's voice was quiet, but carried the kind of authority that made generals pause. "You're speaking to a United States Army soldier about his mother. I suggest you reconsider your words." Mr. Whitfield spun around, his face twisted with righteous indignation. "How dare you! You have no right to—" He stopped mid-sentence because Captain Williams had appeared at Amanda's shoulder, and his expression was strange. He was looking at his phone, then at Amanda, then back at his phone. "Mrs. Walker," he said slowly, "I just received another message from JSOC. They're asking—" He paused, seemingly unable to process what he was reading. "They're asking if Lieutenant Colonel Walker requires any assistance." The room seemed to freeze. Lieutenant Colonel, not Mrs. Walker, not Amanda, Lieutenant Colonel Walker. Mr. Whitfield's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Hayes took a step back. Even the CID officers looked stunned, but it was the reaction of the older veterans in the room that was most telling. Several of them had come to attention, not fully, but straightening in a way that suggested muscle memory, responding to the presence of a senior officer. "I think there's been a mistake," Amanda said carefully. Williams looked at his phone again. Ma'am, I have a Lieutenant General Patterson on the line. He says, and I quote, "Tell Sam I'm sorry her cover's blown, but we've got her back." Do you know what that means? Sam. Nobody had called her Sam in 8 years. It was the nickname her team had used, back when she'd been Captain Samantha Sam Chen, before she'd married Marcus, before she'd become Amanda Walker, before she'd tried to disappear into the anonymous life of a Kansas janitor. The silence in the room was deafening. Thomas was staring at her with a mixture of confusion and growing understanding. He'd always known there were things about his mother's past she didn't talk about, classified things related to his father's service. But this was beyond anything he'd imagined. "Mom?" he said quietly. Before Amanda could respond, there was another commotion at the entrance. 3 men in civilian clothes, but with the unmistakable bearing of special operators, entered the room. The lead one, a mountain of a man with a beard that would make a Viking jealous, scanned the room until his eyes found Amanda. "Sam!" he called out, a huge grin splitting his face. "Holy hell, it is you!" Amanda closed her eyes for a moment. Mike Tiny Richardson, former Delta Force, now working for some alphabet agency doing things that didn't officially happen in places that didn't officially exist. They'd run operations together in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and a handful of other countries that would never appear in any official record. "Hello, Tiny," she said resignedly. He crossed the room in quick strides and, ignoring all protocol and the stunned stares of everyone present, pulled her into a bear hug that lifted her off her feet. "We thought you were dead," he said. "After Marcus, you just disappeared. No forwarding address, no contact, nothing." "That was the point," Amanda said as he set her down. "Yeah, well, your boy breaking records at Basic kind of put you back on the radar. Did you really think nobody would notice when the son of Marcus Walker and Sam Chen started tearing through training like a junior operator?" The room was buzzing now. Everyone had their phones out, either recording or frantically Googling the names being mentioned. Several of the older veterans had moved closer, drawn by the mention of units and operations they recognized. "Excuse me?" Mr. Whitfield's shrill voice cut through the noise. "This is obviously some kind of elaborate joke. This woman is a janitor. She cleans hospitals. She drives a broken-down truck. She cannot possibly be Sir," Tiny turned to face him, his expression hardening. "With all due respect, which is none, you're speaking about Lieutenant Colonel Samantha Chen Walker, formerly of the Activity Task Force Black, and about a dozen other units that don't officially exist. She's got more combat ribbons than your wife has PowerPoint presentations, and she's forgotten more about warfare than most soldiers ever learn." "The Activity doesn't accept women," Hayes protested weakly. Tiny laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The Activity doesn't officially exist, sir. Hard to have gender policies for something that's not real. But if it did exist, and if it did occasionally recruit the best intelligence operators regardless of gender, then Sam here would have been their golden child." "This is absurd," Mr. Whitfield spluttered. "Look at her. She's nobody. She was sitting in the back row. She drives a truck that's falling apart. She's been living on a janitor's salary while raising her kid alone because her husband's death benefits were tied up in red tape for 8 years, Tiny said coldly. She gave up everything, her career, her identity, her entire life, to keep her son safe from the enemies she'd made. Enemies that would love to get their hands on the family of the operative who disrupted their operations across 3 continents. Amanda noticed her phone buzzing repeatedly. She pulled it out to see a notification from USAA. Final death benefit payment for Chief Petty Officer Marcus Walker, approved and deposited, $2.7 million. The money that could have changed everything years ago, arriving just when her past was catching up to her anyway. The irony wasn't lost on her. The room had gone quiet again, everyone processing what they'd just heard. Thomas moved to stand beside his mother, his presence a silent show of support that made her throat tight with emotion. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "All of it?" Amanda looked at her son, seeing Marcus in his eyes, in the set of his jaw, in the way he stood ready to face whatever came next. "Some of it," she admitted, "the parts that can be true." "The Syria operation," Thomas said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Dad didn't die in a regular SEAL operation, did he? You were both there. You were working together." Amanda's silence was answer enough. Captain Williams cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I apologize for the investigation earlier. We had no idea." "You did your job, Captain," Amanda interrupted. "No apology necessary. Actually, Williams said, looking at his phone again. "I've just received orders from very high up. You're to be provided with any assistance you require, including security if needed. There's concern that with your identity exposed." He didn't need to finish. Amanda understood. 8 years of carefully maintained cover, blown in a single morning. By nightfall, her face would be all over social media. By tomorrow, intelligence agencies from a dozen countries would know exactly where she was. The enemies she'd made, the terrorist cells she'd disrupted, the operations she'd burned, they'd all know where to find her. And more importantly, they'd know where to find Thomas. "We need to go," she said to her son. "But the graduation dinner—" Now Thomas. He recognized the tone, the one that brooked no argument, the one that had gotten him through childhood scrapes and teenage rebellions. He nodded, but as they moved toward the exit, Mr. Whitfield made one last attempt to salvage his dignity. "This is all lies," he announced to the room. "My wife is a general. She would know if this woman was really who they claim. This is just an elaborate—" His phone rang, cutting him off. He answered it with a sharp, "What?" His face went pale as he listened. "Yes, dear, yes, I understand, but—" He was cut off, listened some more, and his face went from pale to ashen. "Yes, dear, I'll apologize immediately." He ended the call and turned to Amanda. His entire demeanor changed. "My wife just called from Afghanistan," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She said to apologize. She said you saved her life in Mosul in 2014. She said she never knew it was you because the operator who pulled her out of that ambush was listed as classified." The room was silent, everyone watching this dramatic reversal. Amanda remembered that operation, remembered pulling a wounded brigadier out of a burning vehicle while under heavy fire, remembered not sticking around for thanks because she had 3 more extractions to complete that night. "She said," Mr. Cesar Whitfield continued, tears now streaming down his face, "that our children grew up with a mother because of you, that she's alive because of you." He took a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." It would have been easy to be cruel, to twist the knife a little, to make Mr. Whitfield suffer for his earlier behavior. But Amanda had seen too much real suffering to take pleasure in this man's humiliation. "Your wife is a good officer," Amanda said simply. "Take care of her when she comes home. Combat leaves marks that don't always show." She turned to leave, but old Jim stood up, his prosthetic leg clicking as he came to attention, and rendered a perfect salute despite not being in uniform. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "thank you for your service." One by one, every veteran in the room stood and saluted. Then the active duty soldiers, regardless of rank, came to attention. Even the CID officers and Captain Williams rendered honors. It was a violation of protocol, saluting indoors, saluting in civilian clothes, saluting someone not in uniform, but protocol had left the building the moment Amanda's true identity had been revealed. Thomas watched his mother return the salute with the same precision she'd taught him, the same bearing that had been drilled into her decades ago and never left. When she lowered her hand, he saw something glistening in her eyes, though her face remained composed. "We really do need to go," she said quietly to him. As they moved toward the exit, Tiny fell into step beside them. "Sam, we've got a safe house set up. The boys are already moving to secure your residence in Kansas. We'll have a full security detail." "No," Amanda said firmly. "I'm done hiding. I've got Thomas's college to think about, and he worked hard for this graduation. We'll take basic precautions, but I'm not disappearing again. Sam, be reasonable. You know what's out there. You know who's still looking for you." Amanda stopped and looked at him. "They've been looking for 8 years, Mike. The only thing that's changed is now they know where to find me. Maybe it's time to stop running." "This is insane," Tiny protested. Marcus is dead," Amanda said flatly. "And I've spent 8 years dishonoring his memory by pretending to be nobody. Thomas deserves to know who his parents really were, both of them." They walked out into the scorching Georgia afternoon, the temperature now pushing 107 degrees. Amanda's old truck sat baking in the parking lot, looking even more decrepit surrounded by the newer vehicles of other families. "So," Thomas said as they approached it, "Lieutenant Colonel?" "Retired," Amanda said. "Very retired. Delta Force? Technically, Delta Force doesn't exist. The activity really doesn't exist." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "The scars. They're not from a car accident, are they?" "IED outside Kandahar," Amanda admitted. 2013. Your father pulled me out of the wreckage. It's how we met, actually. Nothing says romance like battlefield triage. Despite everything, Thomas laughed. It was the same laugh as his father's, the one that had gotten her through dark nights in places where hope was a luxury. As they reached the truck, Amanda noticed several black SUVs positioned strategically around the parking lot. Tiny's people, already in place. She might have refused official protection, but her former teammates weren't going to leave her exposed. "Mom," Thomas said as she unlocked the truck, "why didn't you ever tell me?" Amanda looked at her son, this young warrior who was just beginning his journey, and tried to find the words. How could she explain the weight of secrets, the burden of a past that couldn't be acknowledged, the fear that her enemies would find him if they knew he existed? "To keep you safe," she said finally, "and to let you choose your own path. You enlisted because you wanted to serve, not because you were trying to live up to some impossible legacy." "But I am," Thomas said. "Living up to a legacy, I mean. Dad's, and now yours." "No," Amanda said firmly. "You're creating your own. That's what we fought for, Thomas. So the next generation could choose their own battles, or choose not to battle at all." They climbed into the truck, the ancient air conditioning struggling futilely against the heat. As Amanda started the engine, her phone rang. Unknown number, but with a Jordan country code. She knew that call pattern. "Walker," she answered. "Colonel Walker, please hold for the Secretary of Defense." Amanda's eyes widened slightly. She put the phone on speaker so Thomas could hear. "Colonel Walker?" The voice was familiar from countless news broadcasts. "Mr. Secretary, I'll be direct. We need you back. Not permanently, but for one specific operation. The intelligence you gathered in Syria before your husband's death has become critically time-sensitive. The chemical weapons facility you identified is active again. We need someone who knows the terrain, the players, and can operate with absolute precision." "I'm retired, sir." "I know. But 36 hours ago, that facility produced enough sarin gas to kill everyone in New York City, and our intelligence suggests they're planning to use it. Soon." The truck's cab was silent, except for the struggling air conditioner. Thomas was staring at his mother, with a mixture of awe and concern. "My son will be protected by the best we have. I give you my personal word. No one will touch him while you're gone." Amanda looked at Thomas, seeing Marcus's courage in his eyes, his determination, his warrior spirit, but also seeing the boy she'd raised, the one who'd had nightmares after his father didn't come home, the one she'd sworn to protect. "Mom," Thomas said softly, "you have to go." She looked at him in surprise. Those families in New York, in wherever that gas ends up, they deserve to have someone like you standing between them and danger. That's what you do. That's who you are. "Colonel Walker," the secretary's voice from the phone, "I need an answer." Amanda straightened, and for the first time in 8 years, Thomas saw his mother as she truly was. Not the janitor from Kansas, not the quiet woman who'd raised him alone, but Lieutenant Colonel Samantha Chen Walker, one of the most lethal operators the United States had ever produced. "I need guarantees," she said. "Written, signed, Thomas gets full protective detail, immediate enrollment in whatever training pipeline he wants, and unrestricted access to his father's service records. Done. And I want my old team, if they're willing. Tiny's already volunteering, so are Richardson, Martinez, and Thompson. Even pulled Kowalski out of retirement. When? Wheels up in 6 hours. You'd be back in 7 days, maybe less. Send the transport," Amanda said. "I'll be ready." She ended the call and looked at Thomas. "I have to—" "I know," he said. "Go save the world, Mom. It's what walkers do." The next 2 hours passed in a blur. They drove to a secure facility on base where gear appeared as if by magic, delivered by stone-faced men who said nothing beyond "ma'am" when they handed her equipment bags. Amanda checked each item with the methodical precision of someone who knew that a single overlooked detail could mean death. Thomas watched from a chair as his mother transformed. The gray t-shirt was replaced with tactical gear, the worn boots with combat footwear. The woman who had sat quietly in the back row at his graduation was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. "There's something I need to tell you," Amanda said as she checked her rifle, a custom piece that had appeared in one of the bags. "About the tattoo everyone keeps mentioning." Thomas had been wondering about that, the glimpse of ink on his mother's back that had started everything unraveling. Amanda pulled up her shirt, revealing the full tattoo. It was a masterpiece of black ink, featuring the Grim Reaper holding a scroll with 7 names. Above it, the words "The Activity" in Gothic script. Below, a date. Operation Iron Ghost, 03/17/2014. 7 operators went into Syria that night, she said quietly. I was the only one who came out. The military wanted to give me medals. I asked for this instead. 1 name for each operator lost, so I'd never forget the price of failure. Mom, that wasn't failure. I survived, and they didn't. In our world, that's failure. She pulled her shirt back down. But their deaths led to intelligence that saved thousands. Sometimes that's all we get, the knowledge that the sacrifice meant something. Captain Williams arrived with paperwork and to inform them that Thomas was being moved to a secure barracks on base, a facility reserved for high-value personnel. He'd have round-the-clock security and would begin accelerated training immediately. This isn't how I pictured graduation day ending, Thomas said as he signed the papers. Welcome to military life, Amanda said with a slight smile. No plan survives first contact. As they prepared to leave for the airfield, Amanda's phone rang. Another unknown number, but this time international. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello, Samantha. The voice was cultured, British accented, and very familiar. Amanda's blood went cold. Alexei. Thomas looked at her sharply, recognizing the change in her tone. Captain Williams's hand moved to his sidearm. I heard you've come out of retirement, Alexei Volkov said. Former Spetsnaz, now freelance intelligence broker, and one of the most dangerous men Amanda had ever encountered. They'd crossed paths 6 times over the years, sometimes as enemies, sometimes as temporary allies when their interests aligned. I wanted to offer my congratulations to your son, graduating with honors just like his parents. What do you want, Alexei? Simply to inform you that despite the rather generous bounty on your head, I have no interest in collecting it. Professional courtesy, you might say. However, others are not so civilized. Others? The Chechen you put in a wheelchair in Grozny, the Syrian whose brother you killed in Damascus, the Iranian whose entire network you destroyed. They're all very motivated to meet you again. Let them come. Alexei laughed, a sound like silk over steel. There's the ghost I remember. I do hope you survive what's coming, Samantha. The game is so much less interesting without you. The line went dead. Who was that? Thomas asked. A reminder, Amanda said, that the past never really stays buried. They convoyed to the airfield, 3 vehicles moving in tactical formation. Amanda rode with Thomas, neither speaking, both understanding that this might be the last time they saw each other. The mission in Syria was dangerous under the best circumstances. With her cover blown and enemies closing in, it was borderline suicidal. At the airfield, a Black Hawk was already waiting, rotors spinning. Amanda could see her team assembling. Warriors pulled from retirement and comfortable postings to go back into hell one more time. Your father would be proud of you, Amanda said, unnecessarily adjusting Thomas's uniform, a mother's gesture in a warrior's body. He'd be proud of you too, Thomas replied, for not giving up, for raising me alone, for being willing to go back into danger to save others. Amanda pulled out something she'd been carrying for 8 years. Marcus's challenge coin, the one he'd carried through 6 deployments. She pressed it into Thomas's hand. Keep this safe for me, she said. I'll want it back when I return. Thomas understood what she wasn't saying. If she didn't come back, he'd have something of both his parents. As she walked toward the helicopter, something made her turn back. Thomas was standing at attention, rendering a perfect salute. Behind him, she could see other soldiers gathering, word having spread about who she was and what she was about to do. Amanda returned the salute, then climbed into the Black Hawk. As it lifted off, she saw more people gathering below. Soldiers, civilians, families, all watching the helicopter carry her back to war. The flight to the staging area took 4 hours. Amanda spent it reviewing intelligence reports, satellite imagery, and personnel files. The facility in Syria was better defended than before, with Russian mercenaries providing security and Iranian technical advisors managing production. It would require precise timing, perfect execution, and a fair amount of luck. Just like old times, Tiny said, reading over her shoulder. We're all 8 years older, Amanda pointed out. Speak for yourself. I've aged like fine wine. That got a laugh from the team, breaking the tension. These men had followed her into hell before, trusted her judgment when bullets were flying and explosives were detonating. The fact that they had all volunteered to come back, knowing the risks, said everything about the bonds forged in combat. The staging area was a forward operating base in Jordan, close enough to Syria for rapid insertion, but far enough to avoid immediate detection. As Amanda stepped off the helicopter, she saw a familiar figure waiting. Colonel Patricia Hayes, now wearing stars as Brigadier General Hayes, the first female commander of Joint Special Operations Command, and one of the few people who knew the full extent of Amanda's service record. "Colonel Walker," the general said formally, then dropped the military bearing and hugged Amanda. "It's good to have you back, Sam." "It's temporary, ma'am." "We'll see." Hayes led her to the Tactical Operations Center. "The situation has evolved since we called you. The facility isn't just producing sarin. They're weaponizing it for aerosol deployment. If this gets out, if it gets to a major city, how long do we have?" "NSA intercepted communications suggesting movement within 48 hours. We need to hit them tonight." Amanda studied the satellite images, her mind already working through approach routes, defensive positions, extraction contingencies. It was like riding a bicycle, if the bicycle was armed with explosives and people were shooting at you. "There's one more thing," Hayes said quietly. "We have intelligence suggesting one of the facility's advisors is Qasim al-Rashid." Amanda's hand stilled on the map. Qasim al-Rashid, the man who had orchestrated the ambush that killed Marcus. The man who'd been a ghost for 8 years, thought dead by most intelligence agencies. "You're certain?" 70% confidence. Facial recognition from a drone overflight 3 days ago. Amanda was quiet for a long moment. This changed things. This made it personal in a way that was dangerous for an operator. Personal meant emotional. Emotional meant mistakes. Mistakes meant people died. "I need to call my son," she said. Hayes nodded and pointed to a secure phone. Amanda dialed the number she'd memorized, waiting as it connected through multiple encrypted relays. "Mom?" Thomas's voice, concerned. "I'm safe. We're about to step off. I wanted to hear your voice." "Be careful." "I will. Thomas, if something happens, nothing's going to happen. You're going to complete the mission and come home. That's what walkers do." Amanda smiled despite herself. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." After she hung up, Amanda found her team making final preparations. Weapons cleaned and checked, ammunition distributed, medical supplies allocated, each man moving with the economy of motion that came from years of practice. "Insertion is halo jump from 30,000 feet, she briefed them. "We go in dark, no comms with base until extraction. Primary objective is destroying the chemical weapons. Secondary is eliminating production capability. Tertiary is intelligence gathering." "What about al-Rashid?" Martinez asked. "If we encounter him, he's a target of opportunity. But the mission comes first." They all understood. The mission always came first. As the sun set over the Jordanian desert, painting the sky in shades of red that reminded Amanda too much of blood, she stood alone for a moment, looking north towards Syria. Somewhere out there was the man who'd taken Marcus from her, from Thomas. It would be easy to make this about revenge, but that wasn't who she was. She was a professional, a warrior, a protector. The mission was saving innocent lives, preventing a chemical attack that could kill thousands. Personal feelings were a luxury she couldn't afford. The C-130 was waiting on the tarmac, engines running. Amanda and her team loaded up, each lost in their own pre-mission rituals. Some prayed, some checked equipment obsessively. Amanda pulled out a photo, worn from years of handling. Marcus and Thomas at the beach, both laughing at something off camera, their last vacation together, 2 weeks before Marcus's final deployment. "Time to go," Tiny said softly. Amanda tucked the photo away and picked up her rifle. Time to go indeed. The jump was perfect. 6 operators falling through the night sky like deadly raindrops. They landed 2 clicks from the facility, buried their chutes, and began the approach march. The terrain was familiar, painfully so. Amanda had operated in this area before, knew every wadi, every ridge, every potential ambush site. They reached the overlook position just after midnight. Below them, the facility sprawled across a valley, lit up like a small city. Through her night vision, Amanda could see guards patrolling, vehicles moving, workers loading containers onto trucks. "They're already moving product," Richardson whispered. Amanda studied the scene, her mind calculating. The original plan had been to wait, to observe, to strike at the optimal moment. But if those trucks left, If that gas reached its destination, we go now, she decided. Tiny Martinez, take the south entrance. Richardson Thompson, the motor pool. Kowalski, you're with me on the production building. And if we encounter Al-Rashid? Amanda's face was hidden behind her night vision goggles, but her voice was ice. Then he dies badly. They moved like ghosts down the hillside, 6 shadows flowing through the darkness. The first guard never knew what hit him, Tiny's knife finding the gap in his body armor with surgical precision. The second managed half a shout before Martinez's suppressed rifle spoke once. Amanda and Kowalski reached the production building, a concrete structure hardened against aerial attack. But every fortress had weaknesses, and Amanda had spent 8 years thinking about facilities like this, how to crack them open, how to destroy what was inside. The door was locked, but Kowalski had it open in 12 seconds. They flowed inside, weapons up, every corner a potential threat. The hallway stretched ahead, doors on either side, the smell of chemicals thick in the air even through their masks. The first room was storage, barrels of precursor chemicals that would become deadly gas with the right processing. The second was equipment, centrifuges and mixers and things Amanda didn't want to think too hard about. The third had people, 3 technicians in hazmat suits working at a console. They turned as the door opened, eyes wide behind their face shields. "Don't move," Amanda said in Arabic. "Hands where I can see them." One of them lunged for an alarm button. Amanda's rifle coughed once, and he dropped. The other 2 threw their hands up, babbling pleas for mercy. "The production schedule," she demanded. "Where is it?" One of them pointed to a computer terminal. Kowalski moved to it, plugging in a drive that would copy everything before wiping the system. "How much gas has already been moved?" Three containers," one technician stammered. "They left an hour ago." Amanda's blood went cold. 3 containers, each holding enough gas to kill thousands. Already on the road, heading for unknown targets. She keyed her radio. "All teams, we have runners. 3 vehicles left the facility an hour ago carrying chemical weapons. Authorization to pursue?" There was a pause, then General Hayes' voice crackling through the encryption. "Negative, Ghost 7. Complete primary mission. We'll handle the runners." Amanda wanted to argue, but she knew Hayes was right. They had to destroy the facility, prevent more weapons from being produced. Others would have to stop what had already left. "Roger that." She turned back to the technicians. "Where is Qasim al-Rashid?" They exchanged glances, terror evident even through their suits. "Answer me." "Command building," one whispered. "North side of the compound. He has guards. Many guards." Amanda felt the familiar cold settle over her, the emotional shutdown that allowed her to do what needed to be done. She zip-tied the technicians and left them in the corner. They'd survive if they stayed put. If they tried to run, the explosives her team was planting would make it a moot point. Room by room, they cleared the building, finding more technicians, more equipment, more evidence of the horror being manufactured here. Kowalski planted charges with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this too many times, each one positioned for maximum destruction. "Ghost 7, this is Thunder 3, Tiny's voice over the radio. "South sector secure, multiple casualties, no friendly losses." "Thunder 4, motor pool neutralized," Richardson reported. "All vehicles disabled." Amanda and Kowalski emerged from the production building as the others converged on their position. The facility was eerily quiet now, the only sounds the hum of generators and the distant barking of dogs. "Command building," Amanda said. "Al-Rashid is there." "That's not the mission," Tiny reminded her. "It is now." They moved as one toward the north side of the compound. The command building was better defended, with actual soldiers rather than just hired guards. Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group, Amanda recognized their equipment and tactics. This would be harder. The first exchange of fire erupted as they approached the perimeter. Automatic weapons fire split the night, tracers drawing deadly lines through the darkness. Amanda and her team took cover behind concrete barriers, returning fire with controlled bursts. "Flashbang," she ordered. Martinez pulled the pin and lobbed it over the barrier. The explosion of light and sound was followed immediately by Amanda and Tiny rushing forward, weapons chattering. 2 mercenaries down, then 3, then 4, but more were coming, pouring out of the building like angry wasps. "We're gonna get pinned," Richardson warned. Amanda spotted a drainage pipe running under the building. "Kowalski, can you fit?" The demolitions expert grinned. "I can fit anywhere with enough explosives." "Do it. Rest of you, covering fire." For 7 minutes, they held position, trading fire with an increasingly desperate defense. Then the ground shook, and the north wall of the command building disappeared in a cloud of dust and debris. Amanda was moving before the dust settled, flowing through the breach like water through a broken dam. The interior was chaos, wounded men screaming, others trying to organize resistance. She moved through it all with deadly purpose, searching for one face, one target. She found him on the second floor, trying to escape through a window. Qasim al-Rashid, older than she remembered, grayer, but unmistakably the man who'd orchestrated Marcus's death. He turned as she entered, his eyes widening in recognition. "You," he breathed. "Me," Amanda confirmed, her rifle centered on his chest. "You're supposed to be dead. We were told you died in Kandahar." "Disappointed?" He laughed, bitter and short. "Your husband died well, like a warrior. He saved his team. He died because of you. He died because that's what soldiers do, just as I will die because that's what I deserve." He spread his hands. "So do it. Take your revenge." Amanda's finger touched the trigger. One pull, 3 pounds of pressure, and the man who'd taken everything from her would be dead. Thomas would be avenged. Marcus would be avenged. But then she heard it, faint but distinct, the sound of helicopters, multiple helicopters, approaching fast. "Reinforcements," al-Rashid said. "You can kill me and die here, or you can leave and live. Choose." Amanda made her choice. 3 rounds, center mass. Al-Rashid crumpled, his blood spreading across the floor. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no closure, just emptiness. Revenge, she realized, was a poor substitute for having Marcus back. "Ghost 7, we need to go," Tiny's voice over the radio. "Multiple aircraft inbound." Amanda took one last look at al-Rashid's body, then ran. Her team was already at the extraction point, the charges set, the detonators armed. They had 90 seconds to clear the blast radius. They ran through the Syrian night, 6 shadows racing against time. Behind them, the facility erupted, multiple explosions chaining together in a symphony of destruction. The chemical weapons, the equipment, the personnel, all consumed in fire hot enough to neutralize any biological or chemical agents. The extraction helicopter was waiting 3 clicks away, rotors already spinning. They loaded up as the first enemy helicopters appeared over the burning facility, searchlights sweeping the desert. "Go, go, go!" Amanda shouted. The Black Hawk lifted off, nose down, racing for the border. Behind them, the sky lit up with tracer fire as the enemy helicopters tried to pursue, but they were too late. Too slow, too confused by the destruction of the facility. As they crossed into Jordanian airspace, Amanda finally allowed herself to breathe. Mission complete. Facility destroyed. Al-Rashid dead. Her team intact. "Ghost 7, the pilot called back. "I have General Hayes for you." Amanda put on the headset. "Ghost 7 here." "Outstanding work, Colonel. The facility is completely destroyed. NSA confirms no chemical signatures in the air. You saved a lot of lives tonight. What about the 3 containers that got out?" Delta team intercepted them 40 miles from Damascus. All recovered, no releases. Amanda closed her eyes, relief washing over her. It was done, really done. "Colonel Walker," Hayes continued, "I've been authorized to offer you reactivation. Full reinstatement, your choice of commands. The military needs officers like you." Amanda looked at her team, these warriors who had followed her into hell and back. Then she thought of Thomas, starting his own journey, needing his mother more than the military needed another colonel. "Thank you, ma'am, but no. I have a promise to keep to my son." "I understand. For what it's worth, Marcus would be proud of both of you." The flight back to Jordan was quiet, each operator lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the base, Amanda could see vehicles waiting, officials ready to debrief, analyze, dissect every moment of the operation. But there was also another figure, standing apart from the others. Thomas, in his army uniform, waiting. Hayes had arranged it, Amanda realized. Somehow, the general had gotten Thomas cleared and transported to Jordan to meet her when she returned. As the helicopter touched down, Amanda was the first one out, crossing the tarmac in long strides. Thomas met her halfway, and for the first time since she could remember, she didn't care about protocol or professionalism. She hugged her son, holding him tight, feeling the solid reality of him, alive and safe. "You came back," he said into her shoulder. "I promised. So what now? Thomas asked as they separated. Back to being a janitor in Kansas? Amanda laughed, surprising herself. I think that cover's blown. Besides, Captain Williams mentioned something about a teaching position at Fort Benning, training the next generation of warriors. And the enemies, the bounties? Let them come, Amanda said, steel in her voice. We're not hiding anymore. We're walkers. We stand, we fight, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. The debriefings took 6 hours. Every detail of the mission was examined, recorded, analyzed. By the time they were done, the sun was rising over the Jordanian desert, and Amanda was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. A transport was arranged to take them back to Fort Benning. As they flew over the Atlantic, Thomas sleeping beside her, Amanda pulled out the photo of Marcus again. His smile seemed peaceful somehow, as if he approved of how things had turned out. The landing at Fort Benning was supposed to be quiet, but someone had leaked their arrival time. The tarmac was crowded with soldiers, families, and media. As Amanda and Thomas descended the stairs, the crowd erupted in applause. Captain Williams was there, along with Master Sergeant Torres and even Drill Sergeant Rivera, looking somewhat chagrined. Old Jim Morrison had somehow gotten onto the flight line, standing proud despite his prosthetic leg. But it was the man standing apart from the crowd that caught Amanda's attention. Mr. Whitfield, looking smaller somehow, older, he approached hesitantly. Colonel Walker, he said formally. I needed to. He took a breath. My wife called again. She told me more about Mosul, about how you didn't just save her, but stayed with her for 6 hours under fire, keeping her stable until medevac arrived. How you refused evacuation yourself until she was safely away. It was my job, Amanda said simply. No, Mr. Whitfield said, tears streaming down his face. It was heroism, and I treated you terribly. I'm so sorry. For everything. Amanda could have been cruel, could have twisted the knife, but she'd seen too much real pain to take satisfaction in this man's humiliation. Your wife is a good officer, she said. When she comes home, make sure she gets help if she needs it. Combat leaves scars that don't always show. Mr. Whitfield nodded and retreated. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to shake hands, to take photos, to be part of the moment. But Amanda's attention was drawn to a black SUV pulling up. The door opened, and Lieutenant General Patterson stepped out. The architect of most of America's special operations over the past decade, and the man who'd personally recruited Amanda into the activity 15 years ago. The crowd parted as he approached. He stopped in front of Amanda and, despite being her superior when she was active duty, saluted. Welcome home, Ghost 7, he said simply. Amanda returned the salute, then shook his offered hand. Sir, we've arranged quarters for you and Thomas on base. Security will be discreet but comprehensive. The teaching position Captain Williams mentioned is yours if you want it. Full colonel's retirement pay has been approved, backdated to when you left service. That's generous, sir. That's the least we can do. He turned to Thomas. Private Walker, you've been accepted into the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. Should you pass, there's a spot waiting for you in the regiment. Your mother's reputation opens doors, but you will have to earn your place. Yes, sir, Thomas said, standing straighter. I will. As Patterson left and the crowd finally began dispersing, Amanda and Thomas were left standing on the tarmac. Fort Benning stretched out around them, this place where Thomas had become a soldier, where Amanda would now teach others to follow that path. You know, Thomas said, when I woke up yesterday, my biggest concern was not tripping during the graduation ceremony. And now I'm the son of a legendary operator who just came out of retirement to save the world, and I've got a target on my back worth $3 million. $3.5 million, actually, Amanda corrected. They raised it while we were in Jordan, Thomas laughed. The sound so like Marcus it made her chest tight. Is this our life now, always looking over our shoulders? No, Amanda said firmly. This is our life now, serving with honor, protecting those who need it, and refusing to let fear dictate our choices. The threats are real, but so is our capability to face them. They walked toward their new quarters, temporary housing, until something more permanent could be arranged. As they passed the parade grounds where everything had started just 24 hours ago, Amanda saw new recruits doing PT, their drill sergeants shouting encouragement and abuse in equal measure. That was me 2 weeks ago, Thomas said. And in a few months, if you pass selection, you'll be teaching them, Amanda replied. Their quarters were a modest two-bedroom house on a quiet street, indistinguishable from the hundreds of other military families living on base. But Amanda noticed the subtle security measures, the cameras, the reinforced windows, the panic button discreetly placed by the door. Inside, their belongings from Kansas had already been delivered and unpacked. Someone, probably Tiny, had even set up the photos from their old life. Marcus in his dress uniform, Thomas at various ages, the three of them at the beach, that last vacation before everything changed. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Amanda checked the peephole before opening it. General Hayes stood there, now in civilian clothes but still carrying herself like the warrior she'd always been. Colonel Walker, we've had an interesting development. The president has been following the situation. She'd like to video call you and Thomas, if you're willing. Amanda looked at Thomas, who nodded. They were led to the base communications center, where a large screen showed the presidential seal. Moments later, it was replaced by the president herself, sitting in the situation room. Colonel Walker, Private Walker, the president said, I wanted to personally thank you both. Colonel, your actions tonight saved thousands of American lives. And Private Walker, your sacrifice in letting your mother return to duty shows a maturity beyond your years. Thank you, ma'am, they said in unison. Colonel, I understand you've declined reactivation, but I'd like to make you a different offer. The National Security Council needs advisors who understand asymmetric warfare and counterterrorism. Someone who's been in the field, who knows the real cost of these operations. Would you consider a civilian advisory role? Amanda hesitated. It would mean maintaining a public profile, being a target, but it would also mean influencing policy, potentially preventing the kinds of operations that had killed Marcus. I'd need to be based at Fort Benning, she said. My son is stationed there. That can be arranged. You could work remotely, come to D.C. as needed. Then yes, ma'am, I accept. After the call ended, General Hayes smiled. You realize what you just did. You went from anonymous janitor to presidential advisor in one day. It's been a hell of a day, Amanda agreed. That evening, as the sun set over Fort Benning, Amanda and Thomas sat on the porch of their new home. The base was quiet. The day's training completed, families settling in for dinner. It was almost peaceful, if you ignored the security detail discreetly positioned around the perimeter. Amanda's phone rang. It was a message from Tiny. Bar tomorrow night, team's buying. Even got the old man Patterson to agree to come. Wear something nice, Ghost. You're officially a legend now. You going? Thomas asked after she showed him the message. We're going, Amanda corrected. You're part of this now, part of the legacy, the brotherhood. Even though I haven't earned it yet, you earned it the moment you stood by me today, knowing the cost. She stood, stretching muscles still sore from the mission. Besides, these are the people who will have your back when you're downrange. Best to know them before you need them. Thomas asked, Do you think Dad would be proud of how things turned out? Amanda looked at her son, this young warrior just beginning his journey. She thought of Marcus, of his sacrifice, of the legacy he'd left behind. He'd be proud of you, she said, following your own path, making your own choices. And he'd be proud that we survived, that we're not hiding anymore. And the fact that you just saved thousands of lives? He'd say it was just another day at the office, Amanda smiled. Then he'd make some terrible joke about it. As darkness fell over Fort Benning, Amanda's phone buzzed with another message. This one was from an encrypted source, but she recognized the routing. Colonel Walker, the message read, Congratulations on your successful mission. 3 terrorist cells have gone dark since your identity was revealed. Your reputation alone has become a deterrent. Welcome back to the light. A friend. Amanda showed it to Thomas. Seems like just being known is its own kind of weapon. Is that a good thing? It means fewer people will try to hurt us, and those who do will know exactly what they're facing. The next morning brought new challenges. Thomas began his preparation for Ranger selection, a grueling process that would test every aspect of his physical and mental capabilities. Amanda started her new role, teaching advanced combat medicine to special operations medics, while simultaneously advising the NSC on counterterrorism operations. 3 weeks later, Amanda stood in her new office at Fort Benning, looking at a wall covered with photos, her old team in Iraq, Marcus in his dress whites, Thomas at various ages. and newest, a photo from his graduation day, both of them standing together in front of the flag. Captain Williams knocked in and entered. "Ma'am, you have visitors." Behind him were 5 young soldiers, all women, all wearing the insignia of different special operations support units. "Colonel Walker," the lead one said, a staff sergeant with intelligent eyes and steady bearing, "we were hoping you could tell us about the activity, about what it takes to become what you became." Amanda looked at these young warriors, seeing herself 25 years ago, eager and determined and ready to prove themselves in a world that still doubted women could operate at the highest levels. "Sit down," she said. "Let me tell you about the price of excellence and why it's worth paying." As she began to speak, sharing lessons learned in blood and sacrifice, Amanda realized this was her new mission, not hiding in the shadows, not pretending to be nobody, but standing in the light and showing others the way forward. 6 months later, Thomas completed Ranger selection, earning his tab through the same determination and grit his parents had shown. Amanda pinned it on him herself, her hands steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. "He is," Thomas replied, touching the challenge coin in his pocket. "Both of them are." The ceremony was smaller than his basic training graduation, but no less meaningful. This time, Amanda sat in the front row, in uniform, her medals gleaming in the sunlight. No one questioned her right to be there. No one suggested she didn't belong. Mr. Whitfield was there too, his wife finally home from Afghanistan and receiving treatment for her PTSD. He approached Amanda after the ceremony. "Colonel Walker," he said, "my wife wanted me to give you this." It was a letter, handwritten on personal stationery. "Sam," it read, "thank you for saving my life twice. Once in Mosul when you pulled me from that burning vehicle, and again when you told my husband to make sure I got help. The therapy is working. I'm healing, and it's because you understood what combat does to us. With deepest respect and gratitude, Sarah Whitfield." Amanda folded the letter carefully and tucked it away. Another reminder that the mission never really ended. It just changed form. As the sun set over Fort Benning that day, Amanda stood with Thomas on the same parade ground where everything had changed. New recruits were forming up for evening PT, their drill sergeants already barking orders. "Look at that," Thomas said, pointing to a young female recruit helping another with her gear. "Reminds me of someone." "Everyone needs help sometimes," Amanda said. "The trick is being strong enough to give it and humble enough to accept it." Her phone buzzed. Another mission, another crisis somewhere in the world that needed her expertise. But this time, she wouldn't be going alone into the darkness. She had Thomas to think about, students to teach, a legacy to build. "You going to take it?" Thomas asked, seeing her check the message. "Not this one," Amanda said, deleting it. "My war is here now, teaching the next generation to be better than we were, smarter, stronger, more prepared." They walked back toward their quarters, 2 warriors in a long line of warriors, carrying forward a tradition of service and sacrifice. The porch light was on, not waiting for someone who would never come home, but welcoming those who had found their way back. That night, Amanda sat at her desk, writing her first official report as an NSC advisor. The topic: Preventing Future Syria Operations Through Enhanced Intelligence Integration. Every lesson learned from Marcus's death, from her years in hiding, from the mission that had brought her back, distilled into recommendations that might save other families from their loss. Thomas knocked as and entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this." "Thanks." She took a sip, remembering countless nights in forward operating bases, sharing instant coffee with Marcus while planning operations. "Mom," Thomas said, "I've been thinking about what comes next. And I want to follow your path, not just Rangers, but further, Delta, the activity, whatever it takes." Amanda looked at her son, seeing the determination in his eyes, the same fire that had driven her and Marcus to excel beyond normal limits. "It's not an easy path," she warned. "The right path rarely is," Thomas replied. "You taught me that." She smiled. "Then we'd better get started. Your real training begins now." As Thomas left to begin his evening workout, Amanda returned to her report, but her mind wandered to the photo on her desk, the one from the beach, their last perfect moment as a complete family. "We did it, Marcus," she whispered. "We kept him safe. We gave him choices, and he chose to serve, just like us." Outside, she could hear the sounds of the base settling into evening routine. Taps would play soon, marking the end of another day. But for Amanda Walker, Ghost 7, Lieutenant Colonel, Mother, Warrior, the mission continued. The phone rang. General Hayes. Colonel, we have a situation. 3 American aid workers taken hostage in Somalia. The president is asking for your assessment. Amanda pulled up the satellite imagery on her computer, her mind already working through scenarios, options, probabilities. I'll have a recommendation in 30 minutes, she said. Thank you. And Sam, it's good to have you back where you belong. After the call ended, Amanda sat back in her chair, where she belonged. For 8 years, she'd thought that was in the shadows, hidden, forgotten. But now she understood. She belonged here, in the light, using her experience to guide others, to prevent the kind of losses her family had suffered. Her computer pinged, an encrypted message from an unknown sender. Ghost 7, watched your son's Ranger graduation. Impressive. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Perhaps our paths will cross again under better circumstances. A.V. Alexei Volkov. Still watching, still playing his games, but also, in his way, showing respect. Amanda deleted the message and returned to her work. Let him watch. Let them all watch. She had nothing to hide anymore. The next morning brought a new class of special operations medics, eager to learn from someone who'd actually used these skills in combat. As Amanda entered the classroom, they all stood at attention. Sit, she said. Your first lesson? In the field, standing at attention makes you a target. In here, we're all equals learning from each other. One young sergeant raised his hand. Colonel, is it true you were the only female operator in the activity? I was one of 11 women who served in various capacities over 2 decades, Amanda corrected. Each of us had to prove ourselves every single day, not because we were women, but because the mission demanded excellence regardless of gender. What happened to the others? Amanda was quiet for a moment. 3 were killed in action, 4 are still serving in classified positions, 3 retired. I'm the only one who tried to disappear completely. She looked at the class. It didn't work out quite as planned. That got a laugh, breaking the tension. Now, Amanda continued, pulling up a presentation on combat casualty care, let me teach you how to keep people alive when everything is going wrong. Because that's what we do. We stand between death and those we protect, and we don't back down. The weeks turned into months. Thomas excelled in his Ranger battalion, already being watched by Delta selection cadre. Amanda's recommendations led to 3 successful hostage rescues and the prevention of 2 terrorist attacks. The bounty on their heads remained, but no one had tried to collect. The reputation of Ghost 7 and her son had become its own shield. One evening, Amanda received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo she'd never seen before. It showed her and Marcus on their wedding day, both in dress uniform, both glowing with happiness and hope for the future. There was a note. Found this in Marcus's personal effects. Thought you should have it. He talked about you constantly, said you were the best operator he'd ever known and the only person who ever beat him at hand-to-hand. Take care of yourself and the boy. Mac. Master Chief McDonald, Marcus's swim buddy through buds, his brother in all but blood. Amanda hadn't heard from him since the funeral. She placed the photo next to the others on her desk. Another piece of the past reclaimed. Another memory rescued from the shadows. That weekend, she and Thomas visited Arlington National Cemetery. They stood at Marcus's grave, the white headstone stark against the green grass. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Walker, Navy SEAL, beloved husband and father. I miss him, Thomas said quietly. So do I. Every day. Do you think he knows about everything that's happened? Amanda thought about the question. Your father always saw 3 steps ahead. He knew we'd survive, adapt, overcome. Thomas placed his Ranger tab on the headstone. This is yours too, Dad. Everything I achieve, it's for both of you. Walking back through the cemetery, Amanda's phone rang. Another crisis. She let it go to voicemail. Not answering? Thomas asked. Some battles can wait. Today is about family. Back at Fort Benning, they found Tiny and the team on their porch, barbecue fired up. Thought you could use some company, Tiny said. Someone needs to teach the kid how to properly grill. MREs don't count, rookie, he added when Thomas protested. The evening filled with stories and laughter. As the sun set, Amanda looked around at these warriors who'd become family. Thank you, she told Tiny, for not giving up on me. Never leave a fallen comrade, even if they're just really good at hiding. Later, Thomas joined her on the porch. Was it worth it? Everything you gave up? Amanda considered. Every choice has a price. The trick is making sure what you gain is worth what you lose. I lost your father, but saved countless others. Gave up my career, but protected you. Hid for 8 years, but came back stronger. And now? Now I watch you become the warrior you were meant to be. I teach others. I prevent other families from suffering what we did. She looked at him. Yes, it was worth it. They ran the obstacle course together, 2 warriors preparing for whatever came next. Her phone buzzed. Alexei again. The game continues, Ghost 7. Perhaps now we play on the same side. Be ready. Think he's serious? Thomas asked. With Alexei, you never know. But if needed, we'll work together. The mission always comes first. As they entered the house, Amanda paused, looking back at the base. She closed the door and turned off the porch light. The ghost was home, and she wasn't going anywhere. The mission continued, the legacy endured. And somewhere, Marcus was smiling.
The stories end here, but the journey continues. Many new episodes are waiting for you. And if you enjoy, please take a moment to like, subscribe to our EV Story channel, and turn on the bell. See you in the next story.